Welcome everyone to this super secret guide to this top secret talk about how to get a remote job. Uh, I'm Shivek Khurana and I've been in the tech scene for the since 2012. You should follow me on Twitter right here at Shivek Khurana, and I hope that this is a helpful experience for all of you. Before we get started, I see that there are two people here. Maybe it's just one. Okay, that's you. Is the audio fine, Mitesh? Can you hear me properly?
Yep, it's crystal clear.
All right. So for the sake of the introduction, some people might watch it later. I have already introduced myself, Mitesh. Do you want to go ahead?
Yes. Hey everyone, I'm Mitesh, also known as Oxylorg. It's my gaming slash internet handle. And I have also been working remotely since quite a while. I work in Clojure right now, and I am super active in open source communities as well. So happy to be here, share. So I've had a lot of pains figuring all of this out. So happy to share my knowledge with everyone.
Cool, cool. So this talk is divided into four sections. The target audience for this talk is software developers, but most of what we will say will apply to other product people too. Maybe not all of it, but a lot of it. At any point of time, if you have any questions, you can ask that using the chat box on the right. If you're on YouTube, you would see a chat box on the right. We will see those questions and we'll just take them in when the time is right. uh, and if you are here, just let us know that if the setup is working fine. Okay, so the first thing, the remote jobs are elusive and we have heard that they pay really well. But before we get into the process of finding a remote job, there are some things that we need to take care of. uh, so I'll just get straight into it. If you have any questions, as I said, you can just put them in the chat. Before you get started on the search, you need to know that finding a remote job is a tiring process and you need to have good reasons to find such a job. You'll need more perseverance to find a remote job than you would to find a local job. And there are some good reasons to work remotely. The biggest one being that you get a lot of flexibility, you get a higher average pay, that's really obvious, and you get more exposure. The high pay aspect might not apply if you are an SDE 3 or beyond, as many Indian companies pay European rates to experienced candidates. And if you are someone who is under the impression that working remotely includes working on a beach, then I'd like to break your bubble. It rarely includes working on a beach. You'd be on your computer most of the times. The downsides that we don't talk about are a complete loss of routine. There's loneliness because you don't have any social circle, and working remotely as a contractor comes up with compliance hurdles. So, the first thing that we need to do before you can start working remotely is to create a public profile. All remote jobs require you to communicate your ideas asynchronously. Most screenings will rate your communication capacity. Having a showcase of your writing style in the form of blogs and GitHub issues, commits, and videos will give you an edge over every other candidate. Also, a remote setting requires you to love what you do. I have no other way to put it, but while you're working remotely, you're working without supervision. So when I started interviewing for remote positions, I used to ask CEOs what do they look for or what is their top quality that they assess for. And the common answer was a maker's mindset. Having a public profile communicates enthusiasm because nobody would spend time writing blogs unless you are like really interested in it or you're hacking the system. It also communicates proactiveness, it communicates your mindset, it communicates your personality, and all of these factors are important while the recruiters and the company is making a decision. I think when it comes to the public profile, a good GitHub history with nice commit messages is a must for software developers. If you don't have a public GitHub or you don't have a project that you can showcase, I would put in the number of commits you have made to the repository and the total number of commits, the time since which you have been working on a particular project, the number of contributors, all of that in my resume. Blogs on Medium and technical opinions on Twitter and videos on YouTube also help. The idea here is to communicate who you are without actually meeting the recruiters or the engineering team or the founders or whoever. And having this public profile will help you. The next thing that you need before you get started, before you start searching for a remote job, is a 2 to 4 months of runway. Because let's be real, you'll have to send about 100 applications, you'll get about 20 interviews, maybe one offer if you're lucky. Having the 2 to 4 months of runway, make sure that you don't rush and don't take the first offer that comes your way. uh, when I got started, it was just me finding a remote job, and I used to tell my friends that this is what I am up to. Once I was done, my friend was able, it took me about 6 to 7 months to find my first remote job. And my friend was able to take all my learnings and he found a job within 2 months. So having a job seeker buddy will help you a lot. The hiring landscape is fluid and changes often. And if you're working with a buddy who is also searching for a remote job, you can learn from each other's mistakes and advancements. So the next thing before you start finding a remote job is a seniority level. Now, I don't think there is any rule regarding seniority level. Until 2 years ago or 3 years ago, I'd suggest that you work in an office if this is your first job and then apply for a remote position. But with COVID, everything has changed, and I don't see any reason why your first job cannot be a remote job. Okay, so I think there are 11 people here. Guys, if you can hear me properly, if the audio is right, or if you have any questions, you can just use the chat box on the right and all these questions will reach us. I'll proceed to the next section. So far, we have finished the sections where the reasons or the system that you need before finding a remote job. And the next step is the discovery aspect. So after you have figured out that yes, you need a remote job and your reasons are in order, then you start with the discovery of leads and of companies. Oh, Rishabh, thank you so much. Uh, then you start with the discovery process. So there are a few different options that you could go for. US and Canada would pay probably the highest, uh, maybe over 120K. So if you have maybe 5 to 6 years of experience as a software developer in Europe, you can hope to get somewhere between 50 and 100K depending on the location. 50K in the Eastern European regions, 100K in maybe Germany or London. The same jobs in the US will start at 100K and might go as high as 200 with stocks and other benefits. If you live in India, it's preferable to get a job in Europe because of the time zone benefits. You can also reach out to US based companies. That's not a problem, but you might have to justify how you would cover the time zone benefits. There are some companies like GitLab or Basecamp or a few others like Toggle that are remote first. So the location constraint does not apply to such remote first companies. There's also Singapore and Southeast Asia in the list. I personally don't have any experience there, but they would probably pay at the same level as Indian companies. It might be European rates, but they'll be close to the Indian rates. Now, until 3 years ago, if you were looking for a remote job, I would only target Europe. But now Bangalore too is a viable option. If you are SDE 3 or above, uh, you'll get paid almost the same rate in Bangalore and Berlin. maybe a little higher in Bangalore. This is not the fact, this is just my observation. But in general, if you are at a higher level, you'll yeah, you'll be better off working in Bangalore. But on average, you'll earn more in Europe. So if you are a senior, add Bangalore to your list as well. There is a talent crunch here. Now, while sifting through all the opportunities and job boards, you need to look for chaos. So finding a remote job is about breaking a cultural barrier. And to some extent, remote jobs are a hack because you're approaching a tribe that doesn't share your DNA. So if you look for chaos, uh, basically you're treading uncharted waters and you don't know the unwritten rules. Approaching smaller companies will help you bypass bureaucracy. And it also reduces the closure time because smaller firms need help immediately. Also, smaller companies will introduce you to a heavier workload, which is not very process oriented, which I believe is good for your growth. And large organizations might be open to remote work, but will have complicated processes which will take a long time to close. So, in general, just look for chaos. That will be helpful. Following the chaos example, there are a few skills which will be more easy to get a remote job in. For example, if you are a full stack developer or a front end engineer with React, these technologies are used by more companies and by more smaller companies. So the opportunities are higher and you might be able to close earlier. Whereas if you are a specialist, if you are a DevSecOps engineers or if you are a data engineer, you might it might take a little longer for you to find a remote job, mainly because smaller companies do not need DevOps engineers or data engineers. It might be uh, okay. So that's the mindset, and now we can just go to how to find leads. There are two sources of leads. I have classified them as personal and process oriented. Process oriented leads need you to apply on ATS systems like Workable. That will have a lower success rate because there's more filtering and more bureaucracy involved. And a personal lead is when you email or talk to a human being directly. These are the few sources. The slides will be shared so you can just go through them. But the hack is to get a referral. If you have a referral, you'll bypass all the bureaucracy, uh, and that will be easier. You'll just stand out of everybody, like compared to the competition that you're facing. You'll stand out. The process will be easier for you. You will not have to go through 15 rounds of interview. So, if possible, ask a friend who is working remotely. If you don't have anybody close to you who is working remotely, you can also reach out to people on Twitter or LinkedIn, mainly engineers, and ask them for a referral. Most engineers would be happy to refer you internally. So there are some other sources which are personal. The process oriented ones, you can just check the slides. I'll tell you the personal ones and how to figure them out. Twitter is a good idea, and you can just search for the tech that you are interested in. Many times, engineering teams make these posts manually, and applying directly to an engineer will help you cut through bureaucracy. That's what we are looking for. If you talk to an engineer on Twitter and they ask you to apply on the application page, you can ask them for a referral, and they might be happy to give you an internal referral that will again cut your processing time. uh, the next one, and this is the most successful one for me, that's Hacker News. Every month there's a Hacker News hiring thread, and many founders post job openings here. This has been the most successful channel for me. You can search the thread manually, or you can use a third party UI like this one. I have linked this in the slide. You can check this out. Uh, there's Discord. So Discord is a hidden gem when it comes to communities. And you can find communities for frameworks, you can find communities for languages. The quality of the jobs here might be a little off. Some people might be posting some freelance jobs, but you can find gems in here, and you will be reaching directly to the people. So Jitin James says that HN hiring has worked for him as well. All right. The next the next way that I have found out and has worked for some friends is to keep in touch with news and look for companies that have recently raised a series A or a seed round. After that it's really process oriented, but until series A you can like hack into the system. uh, Again, and once you figure out a company like this, you can reach out to their founders directly on LinkedIn or Twitter, or you could reach out to the CTOs or engineers and maybe try to get an interview directly. If that is not possible, then seek a referral so you can go through the process easily. This last trick is something that worked for me, and the idea here is that any listed job will have a certain level of competition. So if a job is listed on Hacker News or Remote OK, maybe 100 people would apply on it. But there are a lot of jobs that are never listed. So you could just use search hacks to go through these ATS systems and find the jobs that you're interested in. So you could write React or Clojure and followed by site and one of the ATS sites like Workable or Bamboo HR. There are only a few handful sites that help you track applications. So this will help you find jobs that are not listed, and that theoretically should lead to a better success rate. However, I have not tried this personally, so I cannot say. Okay, so we have understood the process before the remote job search. We have understood how to discover leads to a remote job, and now we can start with the outreach. That's step number 3. So the thing that you need to remember is that you need to approach pragmatically. You need a system to approach people, maybe an Excel sheet, maybe a Trello or Airtable or whatever works for you, because you'll be approaching a large number of companies. And having a system will help you follow up efficiently and timely. If you are reaching out to somebody over a cold email, it's always beneficial to add them on LinkedIn first. That will reduce the friction for them to reply. The first outreach approach, and probably the best one for me, is cold email. Emailing founders is the so I just list. Okay, if you have been a founder in your life, you would know that hiring is a pain. And if you pay an agency, they might charge somewhere between 1 month of the engineer's salary as their cut. It might take 2 to 3 months to close a senior engineer. So by reaching out to a founder or by reaching out to an engineering team, you are helping them. It feels odd at first to send cold emails, but you have to know that by reaching out, you're making their process easy as well. You're almost saving them a month's of engineer salary. So just cold reach out to people, you can find their emails, and then you can just email the founders or the engineers. There are a few. Hemant is asking, is this session recorded? Yes. So this will show up on the remote in Indian channel soon after this talk, and we'll post links to Twitter as well. So you'll find it soon. Okay. So the next step is how to cold email. There's no science regarding when it comes to cold email. These are the few things that have worked for me. Your cold emails are all about hooking. Each line of the cold email should be a hook to the next line. So you start with the subject line, which should entice the reader to read the first line, maybe to open the email. The first paragraph should make the reader read the second paragraph, and that's it. You end with the call to action, that is to contact you back or maybe schedule an interview, but you have to be really concise. And it's most important to follow up. Just sending one email will not be enough. People are busy and they might forget to respond. So, my personal rule to follow up is to send the first follow up message after 3 days, the next one after 3 days again. And after 5 days, I would send a breakup message saying that I'll never reach out to again. Thank you for your time. And this just helps a lot because it creates an urgency. You can use Google to learn the art of following up and writing compelling messages. This is a tested and researched field. Most salespeople are extremely good at writing enticing messages. So I'll walk you through some of the outreach messages that I have sent in the past. Can you guys read this by any chance? I'm not sure if this. If you guys can read any part of it, just send an emoji on chat. No emojis. I'm assuming that you cannot read this, but so I'll post these slides and I'll tell you what I have done. So for this first company, I got a reply in 3 days, and I made sure that I was including their ideas in the mail. So I read their sites, I checked their socials, and I was including what they said about themselves in the mail. So I was just talking about them, just basic psychology. I also emailed the CTO, and the CTO, uh, I got a reply in 3 days. I emailed the CTO, and the CTO just included the CEO and the CFO in the next thread. And this is the power of small teams, because they could take action within 3 days, and I could reach the entire C-suite by just a single cold email. So that's why it helps. There are a few principles and some unwritten rules of cold email. You can never lie, because when they talk to you, your lies will be apparent. You can't fake enthusiasm. If you check the mail that I sent, that will be posted. I was really enthusiastic about closure and the technology that they worked with. And when they talked to me, it showed. It was also backed by the content that I was creating. So you can't really fake enthusiasm, and it's not a requirement to be enthusiastic. You can just be blunt. That's also fine. The rule is to never lie. It's also nice if you can talk to them, because people want to know how the world perceives them. And over the last few years, I've also added the use of emojis as a must, because it helps you stand out. Because if somebody is reading 15 emails and one of them has emojis, that has a better chance of being opened. You also need to stay concise and experiment. So, just recently, I sent this email, which is more of an essay, and you can get an idea that I did not get a response for this after multiple follow ups. This was somebody I wanted to invite for a podcast. So, you have to be concise, that's for sure, and you have to continue to experiment, because cultures change drastically every month on the internet. All right. So this was like, cold emailing is good if you are reaching out personally via referral or via cold email, but most of your applications will be through the process. And the process would be where you apply through an ATS, maybe upload your resume, maybe upload a cover letter. So it's always a good idea to understand how does the ATS work. Uh, So ATS generally filters for keywords. And if you're applying for a position of a React developer, it's important for you to have at least 50 mentions of the keyword. That will help you stand out when the ATS is filtering. So the recruiter would sort by the strategies that they have created, and having good keyword mix will help you stand out. Also, having a a well designed resume with good colors, with graphics, will help you stand out. Because imagine you are reading 50 or 100 resume applications, uh, and all of them are the boring word templates or just the standard 2 column templates. And now imagine there's one there which has a nice graphic, which has a lot of images, which has a lot of emojis, uh, and obviously it has to be well designed. Like, you cannot just slap things together. Having good aesthetics will just give you an edge, and you might not be the best candidate, but you definitely will be the most observed candidate. So remote Indian, I think this is Abhishek said that you can record a Loom video along with the resume, and that will increase the chances of the success rate. Yeah, this is a great idea, because you're adding your personality. You're telling them how you communicate. This is a great idea as well. Uh, So next, let's go to the interviewing landscape. There has been a recent uptick of remote job seekers. In the last year alone, I interviewed 50 candidates for my company. Uh, our company is remote first. About 30% of them were Indians, and all of them were technically sound, they were experienced, but they lacked at their communication skills. Either we could not understand their accent, or they could not understand European accent, or they were too shy or nervous. I don't know how to solve these problems, but these are the problems that I have seen that most Indians that I interviewed had. Uh, so if you have one of these problems, you need to find a fix. We did not hire anybody because of the communication gaps. But I am also an Indian and I was hired at the same team. What I have learned is if there's somebody with a thick accent, I just need to speak at a slower tempo. So I'll reduce the speed of my words, and that would make it easy for them to comprehend. I also think that traveling in Europe or other cultures help, because if you are exposed to different cultures, you would easily understand their accents, which doesn't generally happen over video calls. All right. So the next part is nailing your about you section. If an interviewer is asking you to tell something about yourself, they're not asking your hobbies. They're not asking the colors that you like. They're asking why you are a good fit for them. So everything that you say in the answer to this question, and also in your resume, should be quantified. So you need to write it in a way that anybody can figure out what you are up to. So I'll give you an example of what I mean. So if you have been working on React, you can say that I've built a React application. That's like poor. And the best one would be where you say that you have quantified the results. So if you moved a B2B application with 30K users to a modern React front end, that's like a great achievement. If you had 150 screens on your React application, that's a significant achievement. If you led a team, that's a significant achievement. So what we care about is the results. The results and quantified results are most important. uh, if you don't have some quantifiable results, then the reasoning or why you did it can also be a good idea. For example, if you did not have a 30K number moving to a modern front end, you could say that we had an old front end in jQuery and we had to move it to a modern React to make it easy to maintain. So the reasoning is also a good selling point. And the least important is what you did, because everybody who is applying is building front ends or is building back ends or is building data pipelines. So going with numbers is just, it just helps you stand out. There's a question from Mahesh, and Mahesh says that the remote in Canada government in works to Canada remote anywhere. Okay, so we'll
Right,
just,
right. Yeah, we can take this after the slides are done.
okay, cool. So let's go further. We are 28 minutes down. This is just my last question. Okay, this is just my last section that I'll cover, and then I'll hand it over to Mitesh. You also need to research the company before you reach out to them, because if you know something about them and if you are able to ask specific questions, then they would remember you. So you could research by reading their blogs or reading their press releases. You can also like read their Twitter feeds and things like that. And when they discuss about the pool of candidates internally, the interviewers would know that you came most prepared. So that's also a good idea, to research about the company before reaching out to them. And finally, this we come to the last section, which is after you get a job. So the first question that you would be asked before or like very close to getting the job would be, how much salary do you expect? And earlier I used to just give a very bureaucratic answer. So I might say that the market rate is fine, or I need more information about the value I bring in. Uh, but after I started interviewing, I realized that it's just a budget check and there is no wrong answer. So you could give your number that you have in your mind. You could tell a range which is better. Or what I have started doing now is I just say as much as possible. So this brings a lightheartedness to the conversation, and it also tells them that I'm interested in their company and I'll work the way it works. So next section is the more technical section where I'll hand it over to Mitesh. Go ahead.
Um, your slides are awesome, Shivik. I think people have learned. I hope people have learned something out of it, and my experiences echo most of what you have said as well. So awesome. Now I'm yeah. So like Shivik said, right? All of this is good, right? But what if you've got an offer and now you're freaking out, right? Like, how do I actually get the money? Like, what do I tell these foreign people? Like, what's the process behind actually getting the money in my hand? So we are going to talk about the money now. Can you go to the next slide, Shivek? Yeah. So the first thing I want to talk about is GST number, right? This is because this is something which was really scary to me. But one thing I want to tell you is that GST isn't complicated. I think it would be best if you can apply for a GST number as soon as possible, because what happens is getting a GST number kind of eases your process inside the bank. Like, it treats you as a legitimate business. You get your current accounts faster, you get your EEFC stuff faster, you get better conversion rates and things like that. So just apply for a GST, because you might be crossing 20 lakh anyways if you're doing a remote job. After you've got your GST number, right, the first thing you need to do is apply an LUT, which is a letter of undertaking, which basically tells the government that GST won't be applicable because I am doing export services. So you can charge people out of India, and you can charge a 0% GST to them. So you don't actually have to pay GST. You just need to get the GST number. Um, Now we come to the bank account, right? So what should you do if you want to create a new account, or maybe you have an existing account? My preference would be to, regardless of if you have an account or not, get one account in ICICI Bank, because I have tried my hand at HDFC and I've tried my hand at ICICI, and ICICI is extremely better. They have great email support, so most of the things get solved on email itself. I don't have to call most of the people. um, they have a great user interface. So as you can see in this screenshot, what has happened is I have got a base current account with ICICI which deals in the INR currency, and then I have four additional accounts, which is one for euro, one for USD, one for GBP, one for Japanese yen. And what's happening is all these four accounts are called as EEFC accounts, like foreign exchange accounts. It specifically deals with that currency. And what's the benefit of having an EEFC account is, the first is it's very easy to get. There is no extra procedure you need to do. It's just a single form you need to fill. The second is that you get money directly in your currency. So, for example, if you get 5,000 euros, your bank statement will show you that you have received a 5,000 euro payment, instead of it just converting directly to INR and then showing you the INR amount. And the third is that in many of the online payment middle aggregators, right, like TransferWise, Payoneer, and stuff like that, having an EFC account reduces the chances of you receiving money in INR. Because what happens is, if you directly, if somebody in the between, right, in this chain of transfers which is happening, if somebody in the between converts it to INR, then you need to fight for your FIRS, FIRC statements, and that becomes a very complicated process. So having an EEFC account kind of reduces that risk a little bit. And honestly, I've never faced any issues with EEFC. To the next slide. So let's say now now you've gone to your ICICI ka branch, you've got a current account ready, you've got an EFC account ready, but now you want to understand that at what rates the transfer are going to be in. So the first thing to understand is, when you Google a transfer rate, right, Google is showing you a mid market rate. So this is different for each bank. Like, not everybody has the same mid market rates. So if you can see here, Google and TransferWise are showing me different rates on the same day itself, like at the same minute actually. And then ICICI has their own transfer rates separately. So all of this data is available online, but since I have been observing this since months, what typically happens is that the rate which you see on Google, ICICI has a 10 paisa rate below the Google's rate. So whatever rate you are getting on Google, you'll get 10 paisa less in ICICI. And after that, there is a conversion fee which ICICI is going to charge. So typically what happens is when you create your EEFC account, you will be assigned a relationship manager via ICIC. And even if you don't get assigned, you can just email them and it's super quick. They'll figure all of this out. This relationship manager, you can tell them how much expected currency, how much expected amount over the year you are going to get. So for example, if you're starting off with something like $50,000, you can expect to get at least 20 to 25 paisa below the ICICI's mid market rate. So it's going to be around 30 to 35 paisa below Google's rate, which I think is very decent. And like, I don't think you'll save a lot by going further than that, like 20 paisa, 10 paisa. But if you're maybe earning more than 100k USD, and then you can just tell your RM that this is the amount I'm expecting, and they'll reduce the rates for you. There is also an online way to do this using a Forex RX retail, like ICICI has some UI to do this, but I don't use that. I just directly deal with my RM since that's very easy. It's just once a month, then it's fine. Coming to the first step, let's say some person has given you money, right? They've sent you like $5,000, and now you need to figure out what to do. So in ICICI the steps are easy. I just log into my corporate account, I'll go to the trade section, and then there's going to be a settlement step. What the settlement step is doing is that ICICI has received 5,000 USD. Now I want to put that money into my account. So I'm going to put it into my EEFC account, which deals with the USD currency. So what happens is I just click a bunch of buttons. I'm going to tell my purpose code to ICICI, which is P0802. And for most software people, it's going to be the same. You tell this purpose code, you just click on done, and what happens is all this 5,000 USD will be transferred to your account as 5,000 USD. So there's no INR conversion happening here, and you get this amount within like 30 minutes at max. So once you have this, right, an FIRS is also generated. So you'll get an FIRS certificate, which I'll show in one of the next slides. Sure, can you go to the step? Yeah. So once you have this 5,000 USD in your account, right? So what's going to happen is now you need to call up your relationship manager, and you need to ask them for a deal ID. What this deal ID is, it's basically your relationship manager has agreed to some commission, like we talked about, 20 paisa, 30 paisa. And this relationship manager is going to book a deal for your amount, so for 5,000 USD with a deal ID. He'll return you like a small string, and you just need to enter that deal ID in the second step. And then it gets converted into INR and it gets deposited into your current account. So into your INR account. Yeah, next step, next slide, Shiva. Okay. So once this is done, right, this is the most important part, which is the foreign inward remittance statement. So it's not a certificate. I actually had a chat with somebody in ICICI's head office, which deals with foreign remittances. And what they told me was they've stopped issuing FIRC, but FIRS is good enough for any kind of proof you want to give to the government that you've received an export inward remittance. And like this is useful, like in case somebody, if sometime if the government comes and says like you haven't paid GST or things like that, then you can prove them, that I have received USD and it's converted into my bank in USD, and then I have this EEFC bank a statement which is also in USD. So this is why EEFC also helps a little bit. And this is an example of FIRS. If you're not using ICICI Bank, maybe you're using some other bank. So maybe this sample helps you out. I actually couldn't find this on Google anywhere, so I've just attached my own FIRS here. Okay, so let's say you've done all this, right? But just to be 100% clear on how, like, if you're following all the rules, your invoice should contain certain things. So your invoice should actually have it written somewhere that this invoice is meant for export, and that you have the letter of undertaking, and that you will not be paying IGST. This should be mentioned on your invoice, and the purpose code should also be mentioned on your invoice, which is the P0802 or something else. And you should also mention HS and SAC. I've seen like some of my friends who've missed this. It's important, even though you're not paying GST, you should still mention this. And then you can mention the place of supply, the country of supply, and all of those GST and PAN details. So I have an invoice template also, which will be shared with these slides. So you can go over there and just copy that template. So yeah, so coming to something a little bit more philosophical, um, what happens is we've been working as like in a job, or like a salaried person, and we've put these self-imposed limits on ourselves, right? But remote work gives us so many opportunities to break these standard routines. Like, you want to do vacation entire year long, you want to move, you want to travel. There's so many things you can do. So I think it's important to keep this in mind, that we can build our own path as remote workers. This is something I've learned from Shivek over the years, which is that it's very easy, like once you're in that mindset, it's very easy to remove these mind barriers. So let's not get too philosophical now. Let's move on to the next thing. um, okay, so adopt a CA, right? This is one thing I highly recommend. I've seen a lot of people trying to manage their own finances, which is cool. It's a great learning opportunity. But for someone like me, right, I don't want to do that. I want to pay somebody. I want somebody who's an expert at their job, who does that and manages my affairs, right? And for this, I would highly recommend find a CA who is honest, who will give you honest advice. And CAs won't like, if you're earning remotely, it's not a big deal to give 20,000, 25,000, 30,000 a year to a CA who's going to keep everything in check. So I would definitely suggest you to do that. uh, On to the next slide. Yes. So before I even started working remotely, right, like I had these so many questions, like should I form an LLP, should I form a private limited company, should I stay a contractor, like what should I do, right? Like what kind of tax scheme should I apply in, should I go in, and things like that. So one major thing to understand is that when you are a contractor, right, when you're not a salaried person, things you're spending on, so for example, if you're traveling, doing vacation, you can remove those as deductibles, as expenses. And that is where you can reduce your tax burden. So anything you are spending in for your business, you can reduce those expenses. And this is very handy, right? A CA will kind of give you more details on how to do this, but you can save a lot of tax this way. The other benefit is that until you're crossing the 1 cr, or 1.5 cr, or maybe 5 cr for Shavik,
There's no
any magic.
limit.
Yeah, there's
There's
no
no
limit.
magic number.
Yeah, so until you've done that, right, I think don't worry too much about the taxes. I think this is also one thing. This was one of the biggest mistakes I ended up making. If you see this graph, right, as soon as you hit 50 lakh rupees as your total revenue, your tax burden is going to increase, because until 50 lakh rupees you have the benefits of 44 ADA, which basically says that you have to pay tax only on half of your revenue. So if, for example, if you are making 50 lakh, you can just pay taxes on 25 lakh rupees, which barely comes out to 5 to 6 lakh rupees. So on 50 lakhs you're making like 5, you're paying 5 lakhs of taxes. But as soon as you cross 50 lakh, right, you now need to start paying like 30% taxes. So it becomes like 15 lakhs of tax. And don't be afraid of this. This is what I want to give, like this is what I want people to know, because I got afraid of this, and then I got mentally complacent, right? I just stopped asking for raises. I was just in my own comfort zone, and I just never tried to go past that. So don't do that. Don't do that. Don't be afraid of taxes. Um, once once uh, so so there is an opportunity here, where your CAs, where you can talk to a good CA, and also don't be afraid to consult with multiple CAs, right? This is your own hard earned money. Don't be ashamed. Don't stick to one CA. Ask a couple of chartered accountants on what is the best way to save taxes here. But don't limit yourself, right? I think unless you've hit at least 80, 90, or 90 lakh rupees, don't be afraid of taxes. Focus more on the technical chops if you can, and just get there first. I think just pay the taxes. Even if you don't want to save taxes, I think I just pay it anyways. Like, I don't think too much. So yeah, I think that's my biggest mistake I made. For a year I got stuck in this valley, and I didn't move past it. But now that I'm moving past it, I think that was definitely the wrong move. I shouldn't have been stuck there. And yeah, that's about it for what I wanted to say in the technical part. And if you have any questions on these tax, and how to get money, if there's some specific questions, I would definitely just ping me anywhere,
Yeah,
maybe on the
we'll
Slack
take some
or Twitter.
questions here right now.
Yeah,
Let's just finish this and we can open it up for questions then.
got it.
So, this was the gist of how you can get a job, how to set up your system. As you grow further, maybe as Bitesh mentioned, the 1 CR number, you might look into offshore entities in Dubai or Singapore or some other more tax friendly countries. You might look into immigration. And there's this whole wild world of crypto companies and getting paid in crypto. So if anybody is interested in one of these three like talks or topics, you can just let me know on the Remote Indian Slack. If there is enough interest, we can introduce, like we can have another chat like this one. And that's all that we have for today. So there was one question.
Yay.
There was one
Yeah.
question from Mahesh, and he said that does remote Canada works remotely or it means Canada only? It generally means you have to be in Canada, but you can work remotely inside Canada. So you can apply, like there is nothing stopping you from applying, and if they are pressed on the resources, they might hire you. But ideally, you should try for a remote only company. Jitin says that it was a great primer on and financial advice. Thank you so much, Jitin.
Thank you, Jatin.
Guys, if you have any questions, you can just pop them in on the right like sidebar. We'll be very happy to answer. All these slides will be available in the Remote Indian Slack. The video will be posted on the Remote Indian channel. Sridhar is asking, where do you work, Shavik? Sridhar, this is a very tough question. I'm an angel investor and I am the CEO of Metablocks. Before that, I used to work at a company called Status, but right now I'm not working remotely. I have found another elusive animal called a startup, so I'm trying to tame it.
I would like to add one more tip to Mahesh's question,
Hmm.
which is when jobs are written like this way, right? They've written it for the optimistic case. So, like Shivik mentioned, right, most of the jobs are unlisted. So, I think you should still apply it because for the right candidate, because now there's so much of talent crunch, right? There's so much of demand. If you fit that role right, I'm sure the company will accept, even if they are, they'll figure out a way to get you on board.
Yes. So currently, if you have applied, oh, and there's a serious talent shortage. I've been hiring for three companies. If any one of you like wants to like get into remote job really quickly, you can just DM me, and I'll be happy to refer you. But the current market scene is terrible, and people with 2 to 3 years of experience are asking the salary of an SD3 or SD4. So if you're smart enough and you know what you do, you should be able to get a job rather easily. And whenever you're negotiating, like I would say, just double or triple your rate just to see how it works. Like you should be pushing the envelope each time. We have got one question for Mitesh from Jitin.
Yep. So Jitin, I work at a company called as Gaiwan. It's a German-based company. We are a closure and closure script consultancy. So we just work with closure script, and I also do a little bit of consulting for Shivek on Metablocks and Trimoji.
So both of us write closure. That's why we know each other. If you have a particular niche skill, like if you write Haskell or Clojure or to some extent Rust or even C++, like not many people can write good production level C++. So if you are any one of them, if you can tune databases, like you should be able to find a remote job rather quickly because not many people write it and the demand for such talent is generally high.
Just to add on to Jitin's question and a little bit of shameless self plug, I also have a YouTube channel where I create closure related videos. So honestly, like Shivik has mentioned in the slides, right? Like your public profile needs to be spot on. So if you check my YouTube channel, my GitHub channel, right, I pretty much get inquiries from lots of people, opportunities, offers, people wanting to interview me. Just like I don't even apply anymore. I just get them by myself because I am in this niche community which is closure, and I'm creating content. I'm active in the communities. I'm active in Discord, Slack, Twitter, everywhere. So I think that was one point which I accidentally stumbled upon, but I think that increases your chances of getting remote work considerably.
Yes, that's a great point. And just having that profile will also increase your knowledge because when you talk, like if we are giving this talk and there are 15 people listening, we have to think a lot because it's only then we can convey our ideas concisely. So
Yep.
the same thing happens when you write about technology or you make videos about tech that you're interested in. So
True.
it's always a great. And yes, I have also seen that like people will reach out to you just by seeing your public profile. If like if you guys have any questions about remote jobs or like setting up your profiles, you can always ask them to me on Twitter. These are our Twitter handles, so you should definitely go there and follow us. And if there are no more questions, I think we can conclude this session.
Mhm.
Okay, then we can just do a countdown of 5 4 3 2 1, and that's it. Guys, thank you so much for taking the time
Thank you,
to
everyone.
join
Thank you
this
so much
talk.
for watching this.
I hope that you learned. Oh, there's one question I work around. Okay, I'll just put it up. I don't think I understand it, Mitesh. Do you?
I feel it.
Okay, that's a good question, and I'll just put it back again. So, when you work with React, which is a commodity technology, it's a double edged sword. There are more
Yeah.
opportunities, but then again, it's hard to stand out. What I would do is I would focus on my public profile. So, I would want recruiters to reach me rather than being the other way around. If that works, and that generally takes time, if you want to like speed up the process, you can reach out to people using Twitter or Hacker News, or just the fundraise thing, or look for unlisted jobs. So if you're working with a commodity technology, you would want to find jobs which have less competition. So that's one of the advice. Do you have anything to add there, Mitesh?
No, I think that was spot on.
Okay. And there's one very sweet question here. What percent of your income do you pay as tax? Like you can, do you want to answer that, Nitesh? I will not tell anybody. I will not tell
Right.
anybody how much I pay as taxes.
Yes. So, like I said, right, I don't think I'm spending too much of efforts in reducing my taxes. I'm spending most of my effort in increasing my income. And this is the valley of death, right? Like, if you get scared of taxes, right, you'll be scared of making more money. And just imagine like how much tax will you save at what, like even if you do the most jugaad and jhol, right, you won't be able to save much. Your energy as a tech person should be spent on improving your tech, right? I work on open source stuff. I create libraries. So for example, the React stuff, right, try and create a React hook or something which is being used by people. Even if it doesn't get stars, it's going to, at least in the interview, you have something to talk about with people, right? Like, I found a use for this, I removed that and created a library out of it. I think, Jitin, you should spend more time on the tech stuff instead of saving taxes.
Yes.
But yes,
And
get a CA. Let the CA figure out how to save taxes.
yes, get to see. And regarding the React stuff, if there's nothing you can do in an open source way, you can also compile things. So you can write documentation, because most open source projects do not have good documentation. Maybe you can create a list of all the useful hooks. All that helps. So that will help you stand out. Just- that was a nice question. Okay, there's one more suggestion from Mahesh, that we talk really fast, and despite we are native English speakers, people don't understand it. That's spot on. So you should definitely work on your presentation skills, or videos like this. Like, I am hosting this talk, this would help me when I see this again. Traveling helps a lot. Reading books also helps to some extent. Getting the accent with moving with movies also help. So this is something that we need to work on. We cannot point fingers at others and say that you don't understand me is your problem. If I'm not able to communicate in a way that people don't understand, then that's my problem. It's up to me to fix. uh so remote Abhishek says, there's a question from Jebin. US-based startup working with closure, looking for a new backend engineer role. Great, like you should reach out to Mitesh or me. I'll be happy to like refer you internally. There's a typo. Okay, okay, cool. Guys, do you have any other questions? Because this is a nice time to wrap it up. We are almost 1 hour down. Cool. So please go ahead and follow us on Twitter if you learned anything from us today. We'll be very happy to answer your questions on both Slack and Twitter. Also, I am personally happy to give referrals. You can reach out to Mitesh to see if he has any.
Yeah,
Okay.
And if you're into closure, subscribe my YouTube channel.
Closure, yeah, closure. Great, great. Both of us write closure. That's how we know each other. If you don't write closure, you might look into it as well.
Yep.
All right.
Awesome.
Thank you so much.
Thank you so
Thank you for
much.
taking me time. Take care. Bye bye.
Bye bye.